I still remember the exact moment it happened. I was bending down to pick up my grandchild when suddenly, it felt like someone had driven a hot knife into my lower back and down my right leg. The pain was so intense, I couldn't even stand up straight. There I was, Janet Miller, a retired nurse of 35 years who'd spent decades helping others manage their pain, now completely debilitated by my own. The cruel irony wasn't lost on me. After working so hard my entire life, I'd finally reached retirement, that golden period I'd dreamed about for years. Travel, gardening, playing with my grandkids. But instead, I spent most days unable to even walk to my mailbox without excruciating pain. Sciatica had effectively stolen my retirement. Or so I thought. You know, it's funny how life works sometimes. As a nurse, I'd seen countless patients struggling with back pain, and I'd always been sympathetic. But there's something about experiencing that level of pain yourself that changes your perspective entirely. Sciatica isn't just physical pain, it's the emotional toll of watching your life shrink before your eyes. For those who might not be familiar, sciatica isn't actually a condition itself but a symptom. It happens when something, usually a herniated disc or bone spur, puts pressure on your sciatic nerve. This nerve runs from your lower back, through your hips and buttocks, and down each leg. When it gets irritated or compressed, it creates that signature pain that can range from mild discomfort to the kind of debilitating agony that leaves you in tears. In my case, the pain started gradually. Little twinges here and there that I brushed off as normal aging. I mean, I was 68. Some aches and pains are to be expected, right? But over a few months, those twinges evolved into consistent, sharp pain that radiated from my lower back, through my right buttock, and all the way down to my foot. Some mornings, I couldn't even put weight on that leg. The first doctor I saw basically told me to take some ibuprofen and rest. "It's just part of getting older," he said, barely looking up from his computer. I left feeling dismissed and hopeless. Here I was, a medical professional myself, being treated like just another complaining senior. After 3 months of worsening symptoms, I finally got an MRI that confirmed what I already knew: severe sciatic nerve compression due to a herniated disc. The surgeon I was referred to immediately started talking about surgical options, spinal fusions, and lengthy recovery periods. I left that appointment even more discouraged than before. You see, as a nurse, I'd seen the aftermath of back surgeries gone wrong. I'd cared for patients who ended up worse after surgery than they were before. The thought of potentially making my condition worse was terrifying. But the thought of living with that level of pain for the rest of my life was equally unbearable. It was around this time that I hit my lowest point. I remember sitting in my garden, a place that had always brought me such joy, and realizing I couldn't even bend down to pull a weed. My husband found me there, crying among my neglected flowers. "This isn't the retirement we planned," I told him. "This isn't living at all." That night I couldn't sleep. The pain was particularly bad, and my mind was racing with fears about my future. Would I ever play with my grandchildren again? Would I ever take that dream trip to Europe we'd been saving for? Would I ever even enjoy a simple walk around the neighborhood? And that's when something shifted inside me. Maybe it was the nurse in me, or maybe it was just plain stubbornness, but I decided that if traditional medicine wasn't going to help me, I'd find another way. The next morning, I reached out to an old colleague who'd become a physical therapist specializing in senior care. Sarah had always been innovative in her approach, focusing on gentle movement rather than the no pain, no gain philosophy that dominates so much of physical therapy. Our first session together was eye-opening. "Janet," she said, "you've spent your career helping others. Now it's time to help yourself." She explained that contrary to popular belief, complete rest is often the worst thing for sciatica. The key wasn't to stop moving, it was to move differently. Sarah introduced me to a series of gentle stretches, specifically designed for sciatic pain relief. These weren't the intense, pretzel-like positions you might see in a yoga class. They were simple, accessible movements that even someone with significant pain could manage. The first stretch she showed me targeted the piriformis muscle, a small muscle located deep in the buttock that, when tight, can put pressure on the sciatic nerve. Lying on my back, I simply crossed my affected leg over the other at the knee and gently pulled my good leg toward my chest. The relief was almost immediate. It wasn't a miracle cure, the pain didn't disappear entirely, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Over the next few weeks, Sarah introduced me to more stretches, each one addressing a different aspect of sciatic pain. There was the figure 4 stretch that opened up the hips, the knee to chest that decompressed the lower spine, and my personal favorite, the cat-cow stretch that gently mobilized the entire back. What struck me most was how simple these movements were. I didn't need any special equipment, just a soft surface and sometimes a pillow for support. I could do them in my bedroom, living room, or even in bed on particularly bad days. The other revelation was the importance of consistency. Sarah emphasized that these weren't stretches to do only when the pain was at its worst. They needed to become part of my daily routine, like brushing my teeth or taking my blood pressure medication. At first, I was skeptical. How could something so gentle make a difference when even powerful painkillers barely touched my symptoms? But as a nurse, I understood the science behind it. These stretches weren't just masking symptoms. They were addressing the root cause by decreasing pressure on the nerve, improving blood flow to the affected areas, and gradually strengthening the supporting muscles. After a month of doing these stretches twice daily, I noticed something remarkable. I could get out of bed without that initial jolt of pain that had become my unwelcome morning companion. I could sit through a movie without having to stand up and pace every 15 minutes. Small victories, perhaps, but to me, they were life-changing. By the 3-month mark, I was able to take short walks around the neighborhood. By 6 months, I was back in my garden, using proper body mechanics that Sarah had taught me. And 9 months after starting these stretches, my husband and I took a weekend trip to the coast, something that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Now, I want to be clear about something. These stretches didn't completely eliminate my sciatica. I still have flare-ups, especially if I overdo it or if the weather changes dramatically. But they gave me the tools to manage those flare-ups without spiraling into that dark place of chronic, debilitating pain. What I found most surprising throughout this journey was how many of my fellow retirees were suffering in silence with similar issues. At my weekly bridge game, when I mentioned my sciatica struggles, nearly everyone at the table had a story to share. Some had undergone surgeries with mixed results. Others had resigned themselves to living with pain, believing it was just an inevitable part of aging. I started sharing what I'd learned with anyone who would listen. Not as a replacement for proper medical care. I'm still a nurse at heart, after all, but as a complementary approach that might offer some relief. The response was overwhelming. Friends and acquaintances started reporting their own improvements after incorporating these stretches into their routines. This experience taught me something profound about retirement and aging. We often prepare financially for our later years, but we rarely prepare physically. We save money for travel and hobbies, but we don't save up strength and flexibility to ensure we can actually enjoy those activities. As a healthcare professional, I should have known better. I should have been proactive about maintaining my physical health, the same way I was proactive about my financial health. But like so many of us, I took my mobility for granted until it was compromised. That's why I'm sharing my story today. Not because I've discovered some miraculous cure for sciatica, I haven't. But because I've learned that we have more control over our physical well-being in our senior years than many of us realize. The stretches that helped me might not work for everyone. We're all different, with unique bodies and specific conditions. But the principle remains the same: gentle, consistent movement, done with awareness and respect for your body's limitations, can create significant changes over time. For those of you watching who might be struggling with sciatica or other forms of back pain, I want to share a few key insights from my journey. First, don't accept dismissive treatment from healthcare providers. If you're in pain, you deserve to be taken seriously, regardless of your age. If one doctor doesn't listen, find another who will. Second, consider consulting with a physical therapist who specializes in senior care. They can provide personalized guidance based on your specific condition and needs. Third, be patient with yourself. Healing isn't linear, especially when it comes to back pain. There will be good days and bad days. The key is to notice the overall trend over weeks and months, not day to day. Fourth, pay attention to your body's signals. There's a difference between therapeutic discomfort and harmful pain. If a stretch causes sharp, shooting pain, that's your body telling you to stop or modify the movement. And finally, remember that it's never too late to improve your mobility and quality of life. I was 68 when I started this journey. Now at 70, I'm more active and engaged with life than I was at 67, before the sciatica began. You know, when I look back at that day in the garden, crying among my flowers, and feeling like my retirement had been stolen from me, I'm filled with gratitude for how far I've come. Not just physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. Living with chronic pain teaches you patience and resilience. It forces you to prioritize what truly matters and to find joy in the small victories. For me, being able to pick up my grandson again was worth all the months of gentle stretching and gradual progress. If you're watching this and feeling like your own golden years have been tarnished by pain, please know that there's hope. It might not come in the form of a quick fix or a miracle cure, but in the slow, steady improvement that comes from taking control of your own healing journey. I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Have you struggled with sciatica or other forms of back pain? What approaches have helped you find relief? Sometimes the most valuable insights come from sharing our stories with each other. If you found this helpful, please consider subscribing to Healthy Back Living for more content on managing back pain naturally, especially for those of us in our retirement years. And if you know someone who might benefit from these insights, please share this video with them. Remember, our bodies may change as we age, but our right to live fully and without debilitating pain doesn't. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you all the best on your own journey toward a healthier, more comfortable retirement.